Hi, this is the second session of Korea's Contributive Diplomacy in the creative industry. And in this session, we are going to look at the history of Korea's creative industry up until the 1990s. The growth of Korea's creative industry echoes the story of Korea's economic growth, which is often called as from the ashes to the world's 11th largest economy. Initial conditions were not that promising. Under Japanese imperial occupation, Korean-speaking films were banned and propaganda films were produced. During the Japanese colonial period, Japan controlled movies and performing arts by enacting various rules and laws. This image is from the Korean Film Archive. If you are interested in watching documentaries and images of Korea under Japanese rule, you can visit this website of Korea Film Archives at koreafilm.or.kr. Most Joseon films during the Japanese colonial period were made with Japanese capital and manpower. On October 27, 1919, Korea's first film, Righteous Revenge, whose Korean title was 의리적 구토, was aired at 단성사, Korea's first permanent movie theater. This film was created by combining Korean capital and Japanese film shooting skills. The movie is about the main character named Song-san. He was originally born as a son of a wealthy family, but he unfortunately lost his mother and grew up under his evil stepmother. As the family was very wealthy, there were always conflicts surrounding properties of the family because of the tricks of the evil stepmother who coveted the property. The evil deeds of the stepmother's gang reached the extreme, which put Song-san's family in crisis. Song-san, who could not endure this anymore, took up the sword of justice. This is the storyline of Korea's first film. As there was no female actor at the time, the role of the stepmother was played by a male actor dressed as a woman. But soon after this film, the Sino-Japanese War broke out in 1937, and the National Mobilization Act was enacted and forced Koreans to screen epic of imperial subjects, Japanese flag, and war slogans. In accordance with the Joseon film ordinance promulgated by Japan in 1940, the permission for activities of Korean producers was cancelled en masse. And a year later, screening of films containing dialogues in Korean language was completely banned. Additionally, Japan imposed restrictions on the import of foreign films starting in 1936, and later completely banned the viewing of foreign films in 1942. Instead, The general government established the Film Planning Council to produce and distribute propaganda films for political propaganda and advertising. Only after independence and the Korean War did the US military rule bring advanced filmmaking equipment to Korea. However, immediately after the Korean War, civilians were unable to produce films due to territorial and capital devastation. So the public sector, and the public sector only, participated in the film industry. Public institutions such as the military, administrative agencies, and the police either directly produced feature film or sponsored the manpower and equipment needed for filming. The subsequent authoritarian regimes, however, severely censored the content of TV and cinema, as well as the lyrics of songs, in the name of national development and fight against communism. The military dictatorship was a time of unlimited physical censorship and oppression of artists. And again, this censorship was justified in the name of anti-communist ideology against North Korea. In 1965, Lee Man-hee, a director of a movie titled 7 Female Prisoners, was arrested on charge of violating anti-communist laws. This is the first case in which a Korean film had been subject to criminal punishment rather than simple sanctions. This is a scene from the movie 7 Female Prisoners. Under the new military government in the 1980s, censorship of ideology continued. The suppression of people's art and labor literature was particularly severe. Although this is not a case of film, in 1982, Kim Ji-ha's poetry collection titled With Burning Thirst were banned. In 1985, the exhibition titled 20 Powers of Korean Art, which is held by young artists, was blocked by the police, and the police forcibly removed 30 art pieces. Years later, the police closed the exhibition hall and removed a work from anti-torture exhibition, which was held to commemorate Park Jong-chol. On January 14th, 1987, at the end of the Chun Doo-hwan administration, the police illegally arrested Park Jong-chol, a student activist at Seoul National University, and tortured him to death. Despite the security authorities' systemic attempt to conceal this incident, the truth was revealed, and it became a major trigger for the June uprising in 1987, which called for democratization in Korea. At the same time, and somewhat ironically, the Chun Doo-hwan regime particularly emphasized culture and the art, perhaps due to the complex about procedural legitimacy and morality. So the Chun Doo-hwan regime simultaneously used the carrot and sticks of budget support and regulatory censorship. With the 5th revision of Film Act in 1984, film production was converted from a licensing system to a registration system. And a completely independent film production system was also established. So, on the surface, the foundation for freely making films were laid. Now, let me introduce another interesting characteristics in the development of Korea's creative industry. Piracy. Piracy was big in Korea, particularly in the 1980s and the 1990s. Piracy refers to an act of illegally copying and distributing copyrighted works without the permission of the copyright holders. There could be multiple reasons, but the poor foreign exchange income at the time encouraged piracy. It wasn't just about film industry. The same goes for the music industry. Until the 1990s, there was a so-called Billboard chart, which is a name combining street, in Korean 길, and billboard chart. In 1990s, you were able to find this mobile display and mobile shops of billboard chart in every downtown. These audio tapes, illegally copied, played the latest popular songs at a low price. But in the 1990s, with the advent of the internet, pirated video and audio tapes have given way to the internet. When MP3 players appeared, people downloaded digital audio files from sharing sites such as 소리바다. In some, in 1990s, piracy, particularly in music, was very common until the recent global success of K-pop. It is somewhat ironic that, in fact, Korea's export of music and screen products was first initiated by music producers searching for external sources of revenue in the 1990s because of this digitally pirated music and screen products. The illegal digital copying damaged the revenue of music producers, and they had to look for the sources of income from abroad. This became the first initial step of today's K-pop. In this session, we look at the history of Korea's creative industry from colonial time up to the 1990s. And in the following session, we are going to see what happened afterwards. Thank you.